Hi everyone, welcome to my Shoreline Studio. I'm Sybille Muschik. Today we're going to be talking about analogous colors, and I have my trusty color wheel with me on the analogous color end of it, and we're going to be working in the range of the blues all the way to the yellow, maybe with a touch of orange for interest later on in the piece. We're hoping to get outside and do some plein air painting, just a preliminary study for our gel plate print. And if the weather holds, we'll take some shots of that. We won't present the whole painting video because that's way too long, and we want to get on to the gel plate. So I want to show you, before I start painting, these thumbnails. I always do this before I start a painting. It's just a quick little value study of work that's in front of you. Often we are really bamboozled by all the details and the ambience of the place, and you want to cut down as much of the distraction as you can. There'll be noise, there'll be mosquitoes, who knows what else. So thumbnails, yes, absolutely. It's a good discipline to follow, and it really organizes your head. So you can see all the different variations. So I pick whatever I like, and then in the study that I'm doing, plein air painting, I follow my little thumbnail quite religiously. So, okay, so for the gel plate print, and I will post this, we will take a picture of it for you to download if you can. Just take a screenshot of it to help you paint it. And also this one, it's kind of noisy there. Whoops. And this is a horizontal view, and this is the vertical view. So you can paint either one with me. And you can see all the analogous colors, right to the orange here. So, and that's what we'll be doing with the gel plate today. So come and join me, grab your cup of whatever you like, and let's have some fun doing some artwork today. We're starting off with Fluorescent Blue here. It's Liquitex acrylic artist color, and this is medium viscosity. Quite a nice color and has a bit of a shimmer to it. So we'll just put a little bit on the plate. Let's see how far that goes. It's not quite as fluid as the fluid acrylics. We can do this because it will even though it's a fast-drying paint, not like our open acrylics, all we're doing is a base color. And then we're printing right away. Nice even rollout here. Okay. I don't mind the lines and things. That just creates interest in the piece. Seem to have fuzzle problems today. So, okay, so next up, we're actually going to paint some background, and most of it's green, so we're going to go for dark greens. So we're going to just sort of slather on paint here. So a touch of the yellow. This is phthalo green. A little bit of a violet, a diazazine violet, some ultramarine blue. Just going to add a little bit more. That's getting there. Maybe a touch of the alizarin crimson, that grays it down a bit. And a little bit more of the yellow. Okay, that should give us a fairly deep green in the background. So we're going to paint all the negative spaces. The negative spaces are the ones you can't name, right? So we're just going to slap it in here. This print should take a fairly short time to do, not like the last one, which was, I think, over an hour. And you'll have fun with all these brush strokes. Hold your brush back a little bit more than usual and just bang it in there. The brush strokes will be interesting. It'll be all those negative spaces, and just keep mixing. Having different colors and shades back there is actually to the good. All right, and just paint around everything you can see in any of the spaces. Just put it in there. Square brushes, square-ended brushes like this. What's number of this? I think I've got so much paint on it that I can't see. It's a 5. Oh yes. Thanks, Josh. He put the light on for me. Yeah. I wondered why it was going blind practically here. Okay. Some cerulean blue up here. I'm just going to lighten up a little bit. And still painting around all these shapes. And then what you're left with, of course, are the poppies. And by using all these colors, it coordinates your paint on the plate here. I don't like to see what I call furrin colors. None of these furrin colors where you're putting some wild color in the middle of something and has no relationship to the rest of the painting. So it should all coordinate a little bit. If you do find that you're going, say, into the poppies a little bit, that's okay. You can always wipe back. And can't figure out if this is a negative space or a leaf, so we'll treat it as a leaf. There we go. Just there's one there, there's a bit there. And then everything else will just be lighter. That's a leaf behind the poppy, so I'll leave that one alone. You want to sort of exaggerate the brush strokes this time. This gives us idea that there's foliage behind there. Since this is gelatin plate print, you could put a stencil in there and give it some character, like a leaf stencil, something like that. That would be fun. I'm just going to continue to paint using my brush strokes as a way to create interest. And we're going to have to mix some more. It's good. Ultramarine, a little bit of the violet, a little bit of the alizarin crimson, a little bit more of the phthalo. Okay. Now the last video we talked a lot about the way colors mix, and painting the masses. Well, again, we're painting the masses. In this case, the background negative spaces. So you're not concerned about naming stuff. That usually gets people into trouble. As soon as they can name something, they have this strange image, and probably a childhood image of what something looks like. So it's sort of like doing stick figures or something. And then it becomes symbolic rather than the actual image that you're trying to paint. And don't forget, you'll be doing it your own way in any case. But if you want to be reasonably true to the character and the shape of your subject, then you're going to have to take the time and trouble to do a reasonable drawing. And that's where your thumbnails come in. We talked about that at the beginning. Okay. Just adding some interest back here. I'm not really messing with the brush strokes and making them sort of flat and uninteresting. We might have to do a little bit more in the negative painting, but we shall see. I think in the meantime, let's print. It might take, maybe one more layer, but we'll do that after we paint some leaves. And already you can see what's happening. See, all the lovely brush strokes really give character. And then once we get our little poppies and leaves in, we're well on the way. So I've added a little bit of Hansa yellow lemon, I think, and the opaque yellow, and some white. So we're going to maybe change brushes to a smaller brush. This is Winsor Newton number 3. Nice square end on it. Not everybody likes working with square-ended brushes, but I find, it really goes around the edges well. And then you often, and even, you can do thin lines pretty well if it's a real nice chisel edge. This one isn't too bad. Okay, I like to wet my brush before I dip it in paint and then wipe it off, so just to moisten the brush itself. Okay, we're going to just, using some of the green we had before, we're just going to lighten it a little bit and maybe add a little bit of opaque white. So the leaves are going to be quite bright, and then we can add detail, with the darkers, darker even than the background. Then we'll really be getting dark. That's for the stems. So those will be high contrast areas. I'll paint them in first in just regular greens. And they're very abstract shapes. You don't have to, slave over. This is a leaf, and the usual symbolic leaf that's sort of pointed at one end and has little veins and things. These leaves are not in that way. They basically drape and fall and, or split, especially with the hail we've been having. God, All my leaves are cracked and split and generally in bad shape. My poor garden. We had a particularly nasty downfall last night, and we have this silt all over the driveway. I think the highway has had a few problems. So it's been that kind of a year. Lots of rain, not much sunshine. Okay. So here's more of a traditional leaf. And there's a little bud in there. So I'm just painting everything pretty well the same color. And then we'll pick out the, I might have to wipe that off so that I can see the details in the leaves. But just basically bad. I told you this was going to be a much faster video. Maybe. We can hope, yes, absolutely. Okay. And I just want it over the little seed pod. This is what's nice about gel plate printing. All these layers are great. In any other medium, you would probably have to sort of paint around stuff or paint it separately or wait for it to dry, on and on. So the gel plate printing is much more spontaneous. So you can do one layer, print, wipe your plate, do the next layer, and so on. And we just pop it in here as well. I mean, I've even painted right over the little seed pods. Okay, I think we're just about, and you could, if you wanted to, even at this stage, you could maybe add some background touches here and there as if there were leaves back there. I'm not sure because it's so dark that it will show up much, but you know, that's something we can maybe think about at the end. Here we go with printing this layer. That's why stencils are such a great item with gel plate printing. Because you can cover up an area. And now I think we have a pretty good idea where all the poppies are going to go. So we already have our base color, the poppy base color. We didn't have to work very hard for that. So all we need is detail. But I'm going to first of all pick out the little seed pods. Now I think I can reasonably see them. And they're just going to be, again, wet your brush. I'm going to make them quite a bit more yellow. So we're going to maybe use our lemon yellow with the opaque and a little bit of white. And a touch of the phthalo green just to keep it really vibrant. That should be good. Maybe that's too vibrant. But, oh, I think we need the bridge here. And this way my bridge helps me to do finer detail work. Now we have to find all the little seed pods. There's one there. And the seed pod's interesting, they're sort of fuzzy. So we are going to put little dabs of yellow on there, sticking out from the sides after this sort of dries. I curl my brush like this so it picks up color without putting too much of it on the brush. And then I'm using a sort of Chinese calligraphy way of putting it on there, holding your brush like this and just letting it run like that. Okay, let's print that. And we're starting to get our little seed pods. Good. We're probably going to have to let that dry. So let's put in the details in the poppies. I've wiped everything off the plate now so that I can see all my details again. And we're going to start on the poppies themselves. We'll start in some details, maybe add a little bit more darks. We have a good base tone. So Shoreline Blue, a little bit of white, and maybe some phthalo. That gives it some depth. Touch of alizarin crimson for a bit more violet. A little more phthalo. There we go. I think that's about the shade that we're looking for here. And back to our bridge. So we'll mess around with the little top poppies first, just to see. There's not going to be a lot of detail on there. Maybe a bit of shadow areas. You don't want too much detail because they're way in the background. And they might be a little bit darker, so that's okay. All right. There's this poppy here, this one here, and just going to paint a little dark around that section and at the base here, and bring up a few lines. Have to worry about the little calyx because it's sticking out there. Don't want paint on that. It is a really light yellow. And then the main poppy. I might just add a touch more of the, maybe even go into the violet. Because it's in the foreground, it's going to have more intense details. So the colors are going to be brighter, sharper. So we're going to be painting down here and then do the little veins. As it's going into the calyx, going deeper, then of course you want that darkness. So I've made the drawing is quite graphic. You don't have to be so graphic about it. It can be softer, thinner lines. You might use a rigger instead of this sort of middle brush. I don't know what's the number on here. This is a number 10. If you're uncomfortable with a brush that I kind of like painting with the largest brushes I can get away with. And in art school, that's what they always say, use bigger brushes. You know, don't fiddle. There's this piece here because it's bent. Okay, and then finally a little side poppy in here. And it's kind of the it's a little poppy leaf there that's bent over. And then I think I forgot to draw in the middle of this thing, but that's okay. We need, and we gotta make room for the little calyx here at the end. Need to turn and that might cast a shadow a little bit behind itself there. Okay. So not a lot of detail. If it looks a little too brushy for you, you can always wipe it back. But I don't like to mess with it too much, so. And we'll print. Just a quick wipe. So I printed and it's a bit on the light side. That's fine. We don't see so much of the brushy stuff that I was concerned about. So let's paint in the middles and then we'll see how much contrast is required. I'm using my rigger. It's a number 4 rigger. This is that brush that is a lettering brush for graphic designers. So we're actually getting into the orange here. And a bit of the yellow. This will be our, this will pop all the other colors out. And I'm going to paint it first. Again, probably my bridge will help here. This will require maybe 2 or 3 because it's got to go over that background blue. So probably white is a good idea in here. Let's make it more opaque. And we'll brighten it up. These are all the little stamens I'm painting. It's in here as well. And in here. White, a little bit orange. And we'll bring out the little calyx. Maybe exaggerate it a slight bit. Okay. Let's print that. Maybe put that white on there. Let's just start. Nice, not so bad. Now the blue is starting to make more sense, isn't it? So for really nitty-gritty details in the blue, I'm actually going to really darken that blue with violet. And maybe quite a bit more phthalo blue and a touch of the ultramarine. It looks very intense on the palette, but when you start printing it, you actually lose a lot of it. So let's get this in. And here. There's a little, the petal overlaps here a little bit, so you're going to have this little dark area. And then behind the stamens, there's going to be a shadow, maybe even in between here and there. Okay. Back in here, we're going to really make that darker shadow in here. The shadow here. These poppies are very luminous in the garden, and they're almost finished now. It's such a shame. They are really gorgeous flowers. And they last quite a long time, right into almost to August before you lose them all. And I'm going to do a little bit of outlining where there would be shadows. That will give it some punch. The little guys up here, there were some orange parts in there. I might just do more of an outline than anything else, just to show that it's two little poppies up in here. You don't want a lot of detail, this is background. It's a mistake beginners make where everything is on the same level. All the colors are the same. We're just going to darken this down a little bit. Let's do our center for up in there, and it's going to be a little bit darker and cooler. This is our center of interest. It's in a, if you're gridding it out in nines, like 3 across and 3 down, then that would be the optimum for center of interest. We haven't talked too much about that, but that's something that to be aware of. Okay, ready to print here again. Okay, we're starting to get a little bit of detail, but not too much. And what I'm going to do is really darken this background behind the poppies. That will make the poppies, that gives them that delicacy. We really don't need much more there, but it gives them the delicacy that they require, and it will just bring them out so much more. So, okay, we'll need to maybe do almost a black there. So we're going to darken the background considerably. So we're going to need our blues, our greens, and then our alizarin crimson. So by adding the red, it will make it really dark. But we'll keep it on a bluish, dark, greenish scale to keep in our analogous theme. So that should be fairly dark. So let's do it all around the poppy here. and we'll print it to see what it looks like. And this is so much fun, you know, when you're just sort of working your way around the poppy. Negative painting really makes it work, I must say. And you will be really surprised at how much the poppy will suddenly explode into view. Up in here. And I'm using a fairly big brush here, so don't be afraid of that. So many painters use these tiny, like one hair to a brush. Totally not necessary. And it's much more painterly if you do it this way. And after all, you're painting, right? It's supposed to be not a photograph, but a work of art that's painterly. I don't do anything really different when I'm painting on plein air. I'm still painting the masses. And not fussing with stuff. You know, one brush stroke should be just about what you need. And then just winding your way around. And then you have this wonderful painterly kind of piece of work. And by using analogous colors, mixing is not a problem. You keep your everything fairly clean and pure. The only color, you know, that's sort of complementary are the reds, but we've kept them confined to specific areas, so not a problem. So everything stays clean and bright. No muddy colors. Now again, this has got to be really dark through here. Around this little poppy. And we're just about ready to print this layer. I've left quite a bit of space on this side. It's a device that artists use resting the eye. So you have because we have a lot of brush strokes, so we have sort of a quiet area to rest the eyes, and then they move back around. You always want to manipulate your viewer as to what it is you want them to see. Blues. By doing darks around your important areas, you're forcing the viewer's eyes to say, oh, isn't that interesting? At least that's what you're hoping to do. And here we are. All these little ins and outs. because this is a, you know, a painterly expression, you don't have to worry so much about neat edges and all that stuff. You're over painting a lot of areas anyway. So let's print this. You do want to be concerned about blobs. I'm taking down a few of the blobs just to I'm just going to go right next to that. Okay. And watch your edges. Printing. I'm just going to take the light table off just to show you, you know, how it's coming along. So now all we have to do is just perk up the little pods, and I think then we're almost done. We have some interesting details just from the brush strokes. It's good. I need to define where the leaves, the petals end, and that's about it. Okay, right. Okay, let's do the separation of the petals on the. I think that's so important. So let's go back to our cerulean blue. A little bit of the phthalo blue too. And I'm going to add that violet. That just gives it that depth of color that you need. Twisting and turning my brush so we have a nice edge, nice tip, and the bridge. This is such a handy thing. You have to make sure that you have one of those. Down in here. Okay. Be considerably darker in here. And again, you're basically just painting shapes. You can't name what these shapes are. I guess you can say it's part of a leaf, but or a petal. And I might wipe a little bit of that away because I think it's going to interfere with the orange. Maybe. There we go. And same for here. And we wanted to get the edge of the leaves in, right? There's one here. And here by the stem it's going to be darker. And separate the two little poppies back in here. Don't need a lot of detail. All right. Now hopefully that's all we need. Unfortunately, the camera isn't picking up the shimmer of the first layer, but it does sort of shimmer a touch. We had a little bit of blue. I might just see if we can just wipe that back in there. That might have been a poppy pod. Okay. So that's better, isn't it? Okay, so now we have that. And let's do our little poppy seeds. Buds, they're not seeds, they're buds. Okay. Yellow, bright yellow. With a little bit of white. So, yep, bridge. There are little details in the, I'm just going to, that I had made that as part of the leaf, but I think it's more interesting as a bud. So that's allowed, artistic license. And it's just overlapping the poppy a bit. There's not a lot of corrections you can make with printmaking, unlike acrylic painting. Because once it's printed, it's pretty well done. Much better. And that's pretty well what you want to do, is just run it down. And we have a little. And the last thing we're going to do is put some of the dark stems. Some of these stems are quite a bit darker. And we're going to put a little bit of orangey yellow on the little fuzzy hairs that the poppy pods have. Little buds. I haven't put any of the actual pods in as the, but they're quite a fussy thing to paint, so. Wait, printing. Yes, you can see the little buds now. We need to just fix that one a little bit. I'll add some white, opaque white to it. And Josh is going to tear his hair out over the noise of the... We're always concerned about sound and the quality of it and not making too many weird sounds. Now I've really picked up the color in that, and we'll see if that works. I'm trying to be as careful as I can. Lots of things to consider when you're doing a video. All right, that might be a little overkill. I think I'm just going to blot that a little bit. Yes, so it's not quite such an intense yellow, and we might have to just go over the green on that, but it works. Okay, we're back to our number 4 again. Anyway, we're going to put some dark stems in. That will be a nice contrast to the leaves. And we'll make it a little smoother. So it'll be more of a in-between color, using some of the brighter colors, some of the blue. it's got to work. It can't be a totally different color. Bridge. So we're just going to do some stems here. I'll just take it right off the and a little bit of veining in the leaves, not much. Just those last little detail touches that you want to finish things off. Again, at home, if you're painting along with me, you'll have lots of time to add those kinds of things, but we're always on a time crunch and we do the best we can. And I don't often touch things after either. I sometimes say I'm going to, that needs more of this or that, but you don't have the same energy when you're doing that, when you're going back to it. I kind of just, it is what it is, and you just leave it alone. I think that's probably your best bet. I'm going to just wipe a little bit of that. You can correct some of this if you want. If there's a funny edge or a blob. That's the nice thing about gel plate printing. If you don't like how big something is, you just wipe her back. Okay, and oh yes, details on the leaves. I might just switch to my rigger here. It seems kind of too thick a line. Well, we're winding down here, everybody. Putting the last little touches. Some details. Maybe a little bit of shadow here and there. A little bit of veining, just the last little. You don't really need a lot of detail. There's a bit of a shadow on the leaf here from that poppy being over top. One thing to be concerned about is overlaps. You don't want things touching, or as we say, kissing. You want things so that, because then you can't tell what's in front and what's behind. So always overlap. And then there's not a problem. So not much kissing going on these days anyway with COVID, unfortunately, or hugging, or any of those wonderful things. And in art particularly, you don't want to do it. I'm hoping everybody's keeping themselves safe. Stay home and paint. That's the best thing. Be kind to yourself. And if you have to wear a mask, why don't you do a gel plate print? And then wear that. I think that'd be fun. And I'm just going to lighten up throw some weight on there. Let's print that and see where we are. Maybe Josh will compose a song for all these noises that we make. He's very good at that. Okay, so we have a little bit of detail in the leaves, not much. I'm happier with this now. Ooh. I think we're pretty well there. Let's just show it with the... Yeah, I think so. We don't need a lot more. I might just take some of that off. It's just a bit too much paint. If you print it again, it gives it the proper the proper texture. A printed texture rather than a painted texture. So I think I'm fairly happy with that. I'm sure at home you'll spend more time on some of the details, but it is you know, a very spontaneous, semi-abstract kind of painting. Take care of yourselves. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps our channel, and share if you want to. That'd be great. Thanks so much again for watching. Bye for now.